On Christmas Eve, my father sold my husband's Rolex, then told me to pack my things and leave the house I grew up in, said I was clinging to the past, while he handed my memories to his new wife like party favors. They didn't just take my home, they took my name off the deed, rewrote my history. And when I found out what Marcus hid inside that watch, that's when I realized this wasn't just betrayal, it was war. What else did they bury? I pulled into the driveway slower than usual that afternoon, tires crunching over old gravel and patches of slush that hadn't melted since last week's snowfall. The porch light was already on. Dorian always turned it on early, not because he expected visitors, he just liked routines. That house still smelled like lemon wood polish and dried pine needles from the fake tree we used every Christmas. I stepped inside, dropped my bag near the coat rack I once hung my school backpack on, and let the quiet settle in. There was no greeting, not that I expected one. Dorian was in the den with the TV muted, Belle probably fussing with the dining table or whatever centerpiece she ordered online this year. I glanced around, eyes scanning the walls. No photos of Marcus, no trace of us, not even our wedding portrait. The snow outside kept falling, same as it did every year. But this year felt colder, not outside, but in the walls. They used to say I was the one who stayed too close. The one who didn't build a life beyond this town. Maybe they were right. I stayed close to Silas. That was enough for me. And that watch, the Rolex he wore every morning, winding it as the coffee brewed. I used to watch him from the kitchen doorway, never said a word, just listened to the click, click, click of the dial. When he died, they gave it to me in a plastic bag along with his wedding ring. I opened the kitchen drawer. Velvet box. Empty. My breath stalled, then quickened. I checked the other drawers. Cabinet, laundry basket, nightstand. I moved with purpose. I didn't scream, just looked. Until I didn't need to anymore. He was standing by the back window, Belle beside him. She had that same frozen smile she used for church functions. He didn't even turn fully to face me when I asked, "Where's the watch?" Dorian didn't flinch. "I sold it." "You what?" He sighed, still not looking at me. "It was just sitting there. Nobody wore it." "It was just dust." My voice dropped. "You sold Silas's Rolex without asking me?" "I paid for that house you live in, Joan. That watch was just a thing." Belle chimed in like clockwork. "You've got to let go, sweetheart. You've been clinging to the past for too long. Marcus wouldn't want you living in grief like this." That's when I knew. They didn't just get rid of the watch, they erased Marcus. I walked out of the kitchen. I didn't yell, didn't argue. I just walked, slowly, with my hands in my pockets, feeling that sting behind my eyes that never fully became tears. My room wasn't mine anymore. The bedspread had changed. The photos were gone. And my clothes? Folded, neatly, on top of a suitcase I didn't pack. That was Belle's language. She didn't kick you out. She laid it out for you, politely, like a dog bed in the hallway. I opened the nightstand drawer, the same one Silas kept a small paperback novel in. Empty. No letter, no trinket, no watch. Just space. I closed it slowly, stared at the brass handle a beat too long, and whispered, "I guess time isn't mine anymore." I folded my coat. No drama, no collapse, just leaving. I remembered what Silas once told me during a fight we had years ago when I felt like I didn't belong in his world. "If you ever feel like a guest in your own story, Joan, get up and write a new one." I walked out to dinner like it was any other night. The dining room was all set, perfect lights, Belle's roasted chicken, red wine breathing in a glass decanter she probably never cleaned. They talked over me, or maybe through me. I tried once, just once, to share a story about Silas, the first Christmas we spent here after he left the Navy. Belle cut me off halfway through. "We've all heard that one before," she said. "Let's not linger in the past tonight, I didn't finish my wine, just stood up, folded my napkin. "I think I'll turn in." Belle smiled. You're always so dramatic, Joan. Don't make this about you. I didn't say a word, just put on my coat and stepped outside. The wind slapped my face like a wake-up call. I didn't mind it. The Christmas lights on the porch flickered behind me. For a second, I thought about turning around, maybe just one more night of swallowing it all down. But then I remembered the velvet box, the empty drawer, and I kept walking. 3 blocks. Same inn I used to pass on bike rides as a kid. Still had the faded green neon sign. Still smelled like burnt coffee and old carpet. The woman behind the counter didn't ask questions, just handed me a key and said, "Room 3. Heater's working fine." I thanked her. Inside, I dropped my bag, turned on the lamp, and sat on the edge of the bed. Silence. Not heavy, not angry, just quiet. They didn't just sell the Rolex. They sold the time Silas gave me. But maybe, just maybe, they also set me free from theirs. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out the receipt Belle had left near the box, folded carelessly. Golden State Pawn. Address. Phone number. My thumb hovered over the number on my phone. The air hit harder than I expected. I thought I was prepared for it. Ashland snow isn't new to me. But there's something about walking out of the only house you've ever called home with a suitcase you didn't pack that makes your coat feel thinner. The car heater struggled to keep up. I didn't rush. My hands gripped the wheel, but my mind was somewhere else. Every intersection, every mailbox. It was all too familiar. I passed the street we used to walk Marcus's dog on, the park where he taught my nephew to throw a baseball. I didn't flinch, didn't wave at the neighbors still decorating their porches. No one exiles you like family, not with yelling, not with doors slammed. They do it by changing the locks in their heart and acting like it was always that way. I didn't cry. I wasn't sure why. Maybe because part of me felt like this was overdue, like I should have packed my own damn bag a year ago. The inn was small, on the edge of town. Faded paint. Same little neon sign that flickered like it had asthma. I parked, stepped inside. Ruth, the owner, still remembered me. "Room 3A's open," she said. "No questions?" "No questions," I replied. The room smelled like pine-scented cleaner and old radiator heat. But it was warm, and I wasn't pretending to belong anymore. That counted for something. I sat on the bed, but my body stayed upright. Sleep wasn't an option, not with Belle's voice still echoing, "Don't make this about you." It's always the takers who say that, the ones who carve pieces out of you and ask why you're bleeding. First time I'd ever spent Christmas Eve alone. Snow fell in slow, stubborn flakes outside the window. Not festive, just quiet. I watched it like it might give me an answer. It didn't. The bag I brought had my wallet, keys, and the pawn receipt Belle had left on the counter, casually, like a grocery list. Golden State Pawn, Rolex, $4,800. December 21st. I stared at the slip for a long while. I'd thought about crumpling it up, throwing it out. But Silas's voice nudged me again, steady as always. "Don't react, respond." So I didn't toss it. I read it, again, and again. Golden State Pawn. That place had been around since I was a kid. I used to pass it on my way to school. Never thought I'd be calling them one day about something Silas left behind. But here I was. They didn't just sell the watch. They gave away my last thread of him, and I wasn't going to let that be the end of the story. Morning crept in without ceremony. I walked to the cafe 2 blocks from the inn. Silas and I used to sit there sometimes, back when people still greeted me like family. A girl behind the counter looked up. "Joan? Haven't seen you since before he passed." I nodded. "Been around." She didn't mean any harm, but even the town didn't see me as me anymore. Just the woman who used to belong to a man. I sat by the window, ordered black coffee, watched cars roll past until I saw their SUV, Belle in the passenger seat, sunglasses on despite the gray sky. Dorian drove with one hand like he always did. I wondered if they were heading to the cruise they bought with my husband's memory. The heat in me didn't boil. It simmered, a low, steady rise. I closed my eyes for a second and saw Silas's face. Our first Christmas. He'd saved for that Rolex 3 months straight, said, "Time is the only thing I'll never take from you." He meant it, but Dorian and Belle had other plans. Back at the inn, I sat on the bed with the receipt again in hand. My phone lit up. A message from my cousin. "Heard about what happened. You okay?" I stared at it, not sure how to answer that. No, I wasn't okay, but I wasn't broken either. I didn't reply. Instead, I whispered, "This ends now. No more waiting for them to do worse. They already had." For the first time in years, I didn't feel like a widow, a daughter, or some woman left behind. I felt like Joan, and Joan was done letting things go. I picked up the receipt, dialed the number listed at the bottom. The line clicked. A man answered, his voice gravelly, like he'd smoked for 30 years and never apologized for it. "Golden State Pawn." I steadied my voice. "Hi, I'm calling about a Rolex. Sold a few days ago. My name is Joan." Pause. Then he said, "Ma'am, you need to come in. There's something you need to see." I sat up straight. "It's gone, isn't it?" "It was sold," he confirmed, "but not before we found something inside it." I looked out the window, snow still falling. And just like that, I knew. This wasn't over. The next morning started gray. I skipped the instant coffee packet in the room and pulled on the same coat from last night. No need to dress up for what was ahead. I tucked the pawn receipt into my pocket, checked my phone, no new messages, and stepped outside. The snow from the night before had turned to slush. I walked through it anyway, not avoiding the puddles. Golden State Pawn sat 5 blocks from the inn, still the same cracked sign and crooked blinds I remembered from when I was a kid. I used to pass it on my way to the pharmacy with Marcus. He always said it looked like a place stories went to die. I pushed the door open. It chimed like it was dying too. The man behind the counter looked up slowly. Tall, thick gray beard, tattoos curling down both arms. His name tag said Nixon, but I would have believed it even if it hadn't. "You must be Joan," he said, voice rough but not unkind. "I am." He nodded toward the back. "Your son told me you might come." That stopped me cold. "Olivier was here?" "Couple days ago. Sold me the Rolex." I nodded once. "You said there was something—" He didn't say a word, just opened a drawer, pulled out a small manila envelope, and laid it gently on the counter. That was taped inside the back of the watch case. We almost missed it. It was sealed tight, looked deliberate. I picked it up. It felt heavier than it should have, maybe because I knew Silas's hands had touched this, hidden it, prepared it. "Do you mind if I sit?" "Take your time." I sat in the cracked leather chair near the counter, opened the envelope. Inside was a piece of paper, folded in quarters, yellowed with time. Marcus's handwriting. No doubt, it read, "Joan's birthday, July 15th, 1955. The day I knew I'd marry her. SS4457, CHO81 DS. Just that, a date, a phrase, a code. Nixon leaned over. "That look like a password to you?" "Maybe." I didn't know, not really. But I could feel something shift in me, like Marcus had left me the one thing I'd never thought to ask for, proof that I still mattered. "The guy who bought the watch," Nixon added. "He asked a lot of questions, got real interested when I mentioned the hidden compartment." I looked up. What did he want to know? If we opened it, if anything else came in under the name MS? You know, like Marcus Sullivan. That's when the heat hit me. Not in my face, In my stomach. Someone had been looking for the watch, not for the brand, not for the resale value, but for what was inside. You have a name? I asked. Cash deal, no ID. Tall guy, mid-40s, real sharp, quiet, kept glancing over his shoulder. Nixon shrugged. I'd give you the watch back if I could, but it's gone. This envelope's all I got. I nodded slowly. You gave me more than you know. Back at the inn, I dumped the contents of the red accordion folder onto the bed. All of Marcus's papers. He kept everything, old bank statements, scribbled notes, handwritten ledgers. I laid the paper down next to the folder. SS4457 CH0815DS. First thing that jumped out, CH0815. Our anniversary, August 15th, DS. My initials, Joan Sullivan. SS4457? No idea. I started matching codes, receipts, anything that resembled the same format. Marcus had once said to me, always keep paper. Paper doesn't lie. I remembered him jotting down strings of numbers on napkins, sometimes bookmarking random pages in books. He'd been trying to prepare for something, and I'd been too wrapped up in grief to see it. After a couple hours, nothing clicked, so I bundled the papers, slipped the envelope into my purse, and walked to the public library 3 blocks away. I didn't trust my phone's connection. Didn't trust anything digital, really. Not for this. It was quiet inside. I picked a corner desk, logged onto a secure browser, searched financial code patterns, Swiss banking. Offshore investments. No luck. Then I remembered his words, again. The day I knew I'd marry her. It wasn't July 15th, my birthday. It was the day we met. August 15th. I typed it in as the password, and the screen blinked. Secure Solutions Investment Management. Client ID, SS4457, CH0815DS. Account balance, $2,470,296.773. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I didn't feel joy. I felt stunned. He never told me. Not during chemo, not in hospice, not once in 43 years of marriage. I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. What were you protecting me from, Silas? I printed the page, logged out, tucked the printout between the envelope and my wallet. On the walk back to the inn, the air felt heavier. They sold his watch for a vacation, but what they really sold was the key to everything he never said out loud. I passed a store window on the corner, displayed inside, a cheap imitation Rolex with a red ribbon tied around it. I stopped, stared. Then walked on. This wasn't about the watch anymore. It was about the message he left behind, and I was going to read all of it. The heater in my room rattled like it was struggling to keep up with the cold that had settled into my chest. Not the flu kind. Not even grief, really. It was something else. Like betrayal had picked a quiet corner inside me and made a home there. I opened the red file box. Same one Marcus kept on the top shelf of our closet, tucked behind a pair of wool sweaters he never wore. The folders were labeled in his handwriting, tight, sharp strokes. Every utility bill, every insurance policy, every bank statement since the 90s. I used to tease him for hoarding paperwork. He'd always reply, "Paper doesn't lie." I didn't know what I was looking for, not exactly. But the string of numbers from the envelope, it had to mean something more than just a bank login. I flipped through tax returns, checking account activity. Nothing unusual on the surface, but patterns started forming. Marcus had recorded offshore income in a way that looked like nothing to a stranger, but lit up like warning lights to someone who knew him. Dated codes, specific highlight marks on transactions that didn't match our joint records. And the annotations, little notes like hold third tier or DS only. That unease returned, heavier this time. He wasn't just protecting something, he was protecting it from someone. I pushed the box aside and grabbed the folder labeled Property, House. First page, the deed. Dated 2 weeks after Marcus's funeral. Owner, Dorian Sullivan and Belle Sullivan. Co-owner transfer from Joan Sullivan. My name, my signature. Except I never signed that damn thing. It hit me like ice water. Hard to breathe through it. I drove to the county recorder's office. The clerk was polite, tapping keys, humming to herself. Printed the file without a blink. Stamped it. Handed it to me like it was any other Tuesday. But it wasn't. There it was, on official paper, Joan Sullivan signing away her share of the property. Only I didn't. That's not my signature, I told her. She leaned in slightly, frowned. The notary on this moved to Arizona last spring. I remember because she left during COVID staffing. I asked about the notary stamp. She flipped through the registry, lips tight. That form's outdated. We haven't used this version since 2015. That was all I needed to hear. They didn't just steal the watch, I murmured. They stole the roof over my head. Back at the inn, I tossed the deed onto the bed and reached for the section of the box I hadn't touched yet. Diagrams and holdings. There used to be a printout. Marcus had color-coded it himself. Property in red, stocks in green, risk exposure in blue. Gone. I knew I packed it. I'd seen it last spring. And then his voice echoed again in my mind. If you ever need to protect yourself, start with what's missing. I turned to the next folder. Insurance. Inside, emails. Not our policies. Conversations between Dorian and a local estate lawyer. Phrases like finalize Joan's exit and minimize conflict over legacy transfers. It wasn't grief. They planned this. All of it. I sat down. My hands were shaking, but not from weakness. From restraint. I dialed Vince Corwin, the lawyer who handled Marcus's original estate plan. He picked up, voice sharp. Joan, I've been expecting your call. I kept it civil. I have a few questions. There's a signature on a deed I never signed. You worked with Marcus. I need context. I'm no longer handling family estate matters, he said. Evasive. Too quick. You're listed on the paperwork. That was before Belle took legal control. Things have shifted. I'd advise you not to dig too deep. These things get messy. I paused. Messy for who, Vince? Long silence. He said, low, sometimes reopening closed files does more harm than good. I replied, only to those who benefit from them staying closed. I hung up. No screaming, no threats, just done. I laid everything out on the bed, scanned documents, emails, photos of the deed, timelines, labeled each one, saved to 3 different cloud drives, one on a thumb drive taped behind the room's wall mirror. Old habit from Silas. I went back into the file box. Buried under receipts was a book, an old paperback mystery Marcus had read at least twice. Inside, folded between pages, was another note in his handwriting. Emergency liquidation, DS protections active, several lines underneath. Property addresses, small asset sales, dated during the final months of his life. He'd liquidated things I didn't even know we owned, not under my name, but under codes he knew I could crack if I looked hard enough. He didn't hide it from me. He left it for me. You saw this coming, didn't you? I whispered. You knew. I circled DS in red pen. My initials, protections active. He wasn't shielding me from the storm. He was making sure when it came, I had somewhere to stand. I looked at everything spread across the bed, like a battlefield laid out in folders. And then I saw the pawn receipt again. Golden State Pawn. It wasn't just the match that lit this. It was the fire I needed to see. They tried to erase me like a line item, but Marcus had written me into the margins. I wasn't reacting anymore. I was about to act. The message came in around 4:30. Aubrielle, of all people, short, barely punctuated. Just a time, a place, and hope to see you. A dinner invite, last minute. Just enough notice to cover their bases. Not enough to feel real, but I said yes. Not to join, just to witness. Marcus used to tell me, sometimes you attend the dinner not to eat, but to listen. Tonight, I wasn't going to be fed. I was going to watch. I wore a navy dress I hadn't put on in years. Nothing flashy. Just enough presence to remind them I still existed. Green scarf around my neck. One Marcus gave me after a cold snap during our first year married. Tied tighter than usual. Kept my chin up. When I walked in, the house felt wrong. Same walls. But nothing inside them looked familiar. New wallpaper, paintings that didn't belong, the soul of the place, gutted and refurnished. No one greeted me at the door. The air smelled like pine cleaner and money. A woman I didn't recognize motioned me to the dining room. That's where I saw it. A small table, off to the side, near the swinging kitchen door. Not set for family, set for staff. A single name card sat there. Ms. Joan S., House Admin. My eyes didn't blink. My mouth didn't move. They wanted me to sit there. By the service staff. Like I was the hired help. Like I hadn't eaten Thanksgiving dinners in that very room for 4 decades. Belle walked past, smiled that charity smile of hers. Oh, that's where the system placed you. Must have pulled an old file. Laughter rippled, not loud, just enough to make it real. Some chuckled. Most looked away. Cowards always do. I sat, not out of weakness, out of calculation. Let them feel they'd won. The chair was low, the silverware mismatched. I didn't touch the bread, didn't sip the wine. They didn't forget me, I thought. They're reminding me I'm not one of them. Belle floated around like a hostess from some southern soap opera. Dorian stood near the head of the main table, arms crossed like a man proud of his empire. They built it on my silence. And tonight, I wanted to hear exactly what they'd built. I let my eyes wander. The walls were lined with photographs, but none of Marcus. None of us. Instead, there were posed shots of Belle holding grandkids that weren't hers, vacation candidates from resorts I never got invited to. Then I saw it. A painting hanging near the fireplace. One I painted years ago. An abstract silhouette of a tree rooted in fractured soil. There was a plaque beneath it. Gifted by Belle Sullivan, 2021. That one nearly buckled my knees. She hadn't just stolen a chair. She stole my work, my hands, my name. They'd rewritten the caption on my life. And I knew better than to scream. Screaming only makes people forget what the lie was. So I pulled out my phone. Took a picture, labeled it, History Stolen Number 1. Quiet, focused. Then the glasses clinked. Dorian stood up. He raised his wine. To Belle, he said, who's brought such light and renewal to this home. He looked right at her, then around the room. He thanked Aubrielle, her husband, their kids, even the caterer. But not me. Not once. Aubrielle grinned. Well, Joan used to be the keeper of the old ways. This is the modern touch. More laughter. My hands stayed in my lap, fingernails pressing into skin. Pressure. Enough to remind me I was still present. A memory came back. Marcus at a dinner just like this, a jab thrown my way, and his hand under the table, squeezing mine. No words. Just the kind of presence that steadied you. But he wasn't here tonight. So I squeezed my own hand, opened my notes app, titled a new list, What They Erased. One by one, I began typing. I finished my wine. No toast, no farewell, just stood. The server who brought me water glanced up. I smiled and said, Thank you for remembering me. He nodded. He knew. Belle lifted her glass. Leaving so soon? We were just getting started. I met her eyes. Calm. No worries, I said. I've already seen everything I needed. And I walked. Not hurried. Not slouched. Straight-backed. Out the door. Into the quiet. Snow had started falling again. Soft. Unapologetic. It didn't sting anymore. I looked back at the house once, just a glance. Then I turned and walked. This wasn't about proving anything to them. It was about not disappearing. The morning came, but it didn't feel new. Just longer. Heavier. I sent a few texts. Not dramatic, not needy. Just checking in. Friends I'd known for years. A cousin I used to see every summer. Silence. Then one response. Belle said you needed space, so we were giving it. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't silence they gave me. It was exile, dressed as empathy. This wasn't about distance, it was about isolation, clean, strategic, quiet. I'd read about this kind of thing before. Not in romance novels, in elder abuse reports. How isolation softens you, makes you doubt, makes you accept. You don't notice emotional frostbite right away. Not until something in you stops working. But I felt it now. I wasn't just alone. I'd been made invisible. I whispered to myself. They didn't silence me. They surrounded me with silence. I picked up the phone again. This time, not for comfort, for facts. Vince Corwin answered on the second ring. His voice used to sound warm. It didn't anymore. Joan, he said, I figured I'd hear from you. I'm looking at some things Marcus kept, I told him. There are discrepancies. You handled the original estate. You know what I'm talking about. I'm no longer involved in that matter, he said quickly. Belle's retained new counsel. I've stepped back. You were listed as the attorney of record during the transfer. He didn't respond. There's a signature on a deed that isn't mine. Still quiet. I'm asking for clarity, that's all. Then, the shift. You're walking into a legal hornet's nest. This will exhaust you. I let the pause sit long enough to bite. You're assuming I haven't already been. Another pause. His breath hitched just slightly. I ended the call without another word. Then I opened my laptop. Marcus once told me, the more they warn you not to dig, the closer you are to the treasure. I took out every file I had, laid it all across the bed. I turned my room into a war map, property in red, social manipulation in blue, financial movements in green, and right in the center, taped down with worn edges, the pawn receipt, the match they lit thinking it would fade. But it became the anchor. I connected everything back to that moment. When the watch disappeared, the mask started to slip. It wasn't just inheritance, it was erasure. They weren't just cleaning house, they were removing the evidence I ever lived in it. I started thinking out loud. If I were them, how would I erase someone? No fight, no paperwork, just silence and old stories. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't emotional. It was math. Erased lines, missing signatures, delayed replies, real estate lawyers on speed dial. This wasn't a puzzle. It was a crime scene, with perfect makeup. Somewhere around noon, the weight hit me. Not physically, just all at once. I found myself on the bathroom floor, knees folded, arms wrapped. Like a child hiding from thunder. And then, tears, not loud, not ugly, just steady. The first time since Marcus died, not because I was weak, but because I'd finally stopped pretending I wasn't tired. You can't carry armor forever, I said aloud, wiping my face with the back of my sleeve. People used to call me too nice, too private, not assertive enough. But that privacy, it protected everything they didn't know I kept. They'd assumed silence was surrender. It wasn't. It was storage. I looked in the mirror, eyes still red. They don't get to write the ending. I pulled myself together, slowly, deliberately. Then I scanned every file, uploaded them to a secure cloud, named the folder. Marcus was right. I shared it with a legal support network online, anonymous, quiet, precise. Then I drafted a decoy email to Vince, said I was dropping the matter. Too tired. Thanked him for his time. Sent. I waited. It took 3 hours. At 4:13 p.m., Belle's sister called me. I hadn't heard from her in a year. "Hey, Joan," she said, overly bright. "Just wanted to check on you, see how you're holding up." She didn't call for kindness. She called because someone told her I was stepping back, which meant someone was watching, which meant someone was scared. I thanked her flatly, hung up before she could spin another web. Then I turned back to the bed, looked at the web I'd spun instead. They wanted me boxed out, but I'd built my own box, of proof, of patterns, of truth. I uncapped a red marker, wrote one word across the bathroom mirror. Ready. The invite came in over voicemail. Aubrielle's voice, fake sweet and rushed. Something about a community fundraiser Belle and Dorian were hosting at the Lakeside Hall. She didn't say why she was calling me last minute. She didn't have to. It wasn't about kindness. It was about optics. I stared at my closet for a while before picking what to wear. I didn't need to impress anyone. I just needed to show up. So I wore black slacks, a dark green blouse, and the same coat I wore to Marcus's funeral. No earrings, no makeup, just presents. I folded one page and tucked it into my purse, a printout of Marcus's trust allocations, not for show. Just a reminder to myself that my memory wasn't all that remained. Facts were. Before I left the room, I looked in the mirror and told myself, this isn't their stage. It's mine. I just let them borrow it too long. The building was lit up like a wedding reception. Too many lights, too much white linen. As I walked through the entrance, I remembered Marcus's words again. Some fights don't need fists, just facts and a room full of ears. I signed in at the reception desk where a young volunteer handed me a place card. Joanne Sullivan, facility manager. My feet stopped. My face didn't change. Facility manager. I turned the card over. Nothing on the back. I smiled at the volunteer. She didn't know better. Belle floated past, her perfume arriving 2 seconds ahead of her. "Oh," she said with mock surprise. "Must have been a system mix-up. We were in such a rush organizing all this. You know how these things go." I nodded once and walked to the side table, the one furthest from the main floor. My seat was between the AV technician and the catering coordinator. Intentional. Precise. Every time they tried to make me smaller, they forgot something critical. When you minimize a woman like me, you make her sharper. I sat, back straight, scanning the program booklet. Marcus's name appeared once, under Belle's scheduled tribute titled Resilience and Renewal. They weren't just burying him. They were replacing him. Dorian took the stage 15 minutes later, microphone in hand, beaming like a local politician. "I want to thank my beautiful wife," he began, "who's brought such warmth and purpose into this house. She's the woman who redefined grace." Applause followed. Too loud. Too performative. Aubrielle's voice broke through the clapping. "It's good Joan stayed single. Less mess to untangle." Laughter, just enough to wound. I didn't flinch. I didn't sip my water. I didn't blink. Stillness was the only language they didn't know how to answer. Marcus used to whisper to me, "They talk louder when they're nervous. Let them talk." I stood quietly, walked to the back of the room like I was stretching my legs. He was sitting at the bar, nursing a club soda with a lime. Reuben, Marcus's oldest friend, former colleague. The man who saw me through 3 decades of family holidays and hospital stays. I didn't expect him. He looked up, nodded like he'd just been waiting for me to catch up. He told me, he said softly. If this family ever turned on you, I'd know. He handed me a small black USB and a sealed envelope. No fanfare, no sermon. He documented everything, Reuben added. Timelines, sale records, journal entries. He knew this was coming. I held them both like they were porcelain. I didn't say thank you. I didn't say anything. Because I felt it then. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't exaggerating. I'd been right. Reuben leaned closer. He called you the real legacy. I nodded. He always saw me when others didn't. Back inside the hall, they were announcing the open floor for Community Reflections. I didn't hesitate. I walked straight to the microphone. Eyes turned. Murmurs rippled. Belle's smile tightened. I didn't give a speech. I gave them truth. Some things are taken. Some are given. But truth doesn't ask permission to return. You could hear the room's breath hold. Dorian didn't move. Belle glanced at the event coordinator. Aubrielle rolled her eyes. I paused. Just long enough. Marcus used to say, integrity doesn't need defense, just daylight. So here's mine. I reached into my coat pocket, pulled out the name card, placed it face up on the podium. Then I walked. Not a scene. Just impact. My phone buzzed in my hand before I reached the door. A notification. Email from the journalist I'd contacted 3 days ago. Subject line. Ready to publish. The phone buzzed before sunrise. 3 missed calls, 12 new texts, screenshots flooding in. I didn't need to open them to know what had happened. Aubrielle. She'd posted something on Facebook late the night before, a photo of me from the dinner at Lakeside Hall, my face blurred slightly by the lighting, captioned, "Mental instability shouldn't equal entitlement. Some people don't know when to let go." Her words spread fast. The comments stung more than I cared to admit. Some defended me. Others didn't hold back, calling me a gold digger, a bitter widow, someone trying to rewrite the will of a dead man. "Don't waste energy on liars," one post read. "Move on. That's what healthy people do." I stared at the screen, not angry, just steady. A text from my cousin blinked up. "You should say something before this spirals." But I knew better. If they thought it would end with a Facebook post, they'd underestimated the widow. By noon, the snow had melted into thick puddles outside the inn's entryway. I was sitting by the window, sorting through the paperwork again, when there was a knock on the door. Not urgent, not hesitant either. I opened it. Young woman, maybe late 20s. Dark braids pulled back. Nervous smile. "You're Joan, right?" she asked. "I am." "My name's Peaches. Marcus. He called me his goddaughter. I know we never met." I nodded slowly, stepping aside. She sat at the small table, pulled out a flash drive and a sealed envelope. "Somebody reached out to me 2 weeks ago," she said. "Offered money to keep quiet. Said whatever I knew about Marcus's accounts was sensitive family material. Thing is, he already told me you might come looking." She pushed the items across the table. "He said if anything ever happened to him, you'd know what to do." I picked up the envelope, fingertips tingling. I hadn't been chasing ghosts. I'd been walking towards something real. She left not long after, quiet and kind, said she didn't want to be pulled into any family circus, but that she owed Marcus too much to ignore his last request. Once alone, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The folder was labeled, "For Joan, Final Instructions." Inside, a video. Marcus. Sitting at his old office desk, hair thinner than I remembered, eyes more tired, but still sharp. "Joan," he said, "if you're watching this, I didn't get to tell you everything." He spoke slowly, clearly, laid out what I already suspected: offshore accounts, asset transfers done without Belle's knowledge, protections created to shield what little he could. I suspected Dorian, he admitted. He was pushing too hard, asking too many questions about you, about the house, about everything. Then he looked right into the camera. You're stronger than you let yourself believe. Don't just survive this, finish it. The screen went black. I watched it twice. The first time, I cried. The second time, I started writing. He hadn't been hiding things from me. He'd been hiding things for me. That afternoon, I gathered everything. Emails, screenshots, deeds, scanned pages, the name card from that dinner, the one that said facility manager. I bundled them and sent it all to a local journalist I'd spoken with once, briefly, months ago. She'd been waiting for my go-ahead since the night I walked off stage. She called within the hour. "This isn't a story about family," she said. "This is a story about cover-up, elder abuse, fraud." Her words didn't shock me. They confirmed what I already knew. I didn't want revenge. I wanted truth. A record. Something that couldn't be rewritten. They buried a story. I was going to dig it up. That night, I sat at the small desk in my room and typed one sentence into a new post. "I don't need to fight you. I just need to remind you, paper doesn't lie." I added a link to the article, scheduled to go live at 7 a.m. 10 minutes later, Belle's name flashed on my phone, voicemail only. "Joan, let's talk, before this gets ugly." I played it once, then deleted it. I lit a candle, set the Rolex box next to it, not for mourning, for truth. I slept deeper than I had in weeks. The article dropped just after midnight. I didn't stay up to watch it happen. I didn't need to. By the time I opened my eyes, my phone had already lit up like a fire alarm, notifications stacked on top of each other. Emails, texts, missed calls. People I hadn't heard from in years suddenly wanted to check in. And then there were the comments. A video clip from my speech at the fundraiser had gone viral. Low lighting, poor camera angle, and someone had slapped Belle's name into the caption. The internet ran with it, praised her, applauded her courage, called her the voice for forgotten women. I didn't correct them, let them cheer the wrong woman. The truth didn't need my name, it only needed to be heard. I read one comment that stuck with me. "It's not about justice, it's about being remembered right." They remembered someone. That was enough. By noon, the fallout began. Local news ran follow-ups. Journalists I didn't recognize started digging. Belle and Dorian stopped answering calls. The nonprofit Belle chaired went into special review. A board meeting was scheduled within 48 hours. Someone leaked the deed transfer documents, the handwriting comparisons, the notary that disappeared to Arizona. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. It was fraud. I got a call from the public radio station. They wanted me to speak, just 10 minutes. I agreed. One condition, no editing, no soft lighting, no spins. I sat in their booth, headset on, staring at the wall as I spoke. "Grief doesn't give you permission to erase someone else's story," I said, "and being quiet doesn't mean you don't remember every single thing." There was no fanfare when I left, no cameras, just the sound of tires crunching in the parking lot and my boots hitting cold pavement. It wasn't a victory lap, it was a reckoning. 2 days later, I met Peaches again, the park by the lake. Winter was softening, just barely. We brought coffee and travel mugs and sat on the same bench without speaking for a long while. When I finally broke the silence, I didn't thank her for the flash drive. I thanked her for the proof, not the evidence, the proof that Marcus never stopped believing in me. She smiled. "He used to say your silence was strength, but that one day you'd need to be loud." I nodded. I wasn't loud, I was clear. We sat there a little longer, not family by blood, but something else, something earned. We didn't promise to stay in touch, we just knew we would. Later that evening, I walked past the house. Not to go in, just to see. It sat still. Lights off. Curtains drawn. They weren't there. Probably staying somewhere quieter. Somewhere less subpoena-friendly. I didn't step on the porch. I didn't touch the door. I just stood at the edge of the gate, staring through the windows. The same ones I used to stare out of when I was 12, wondering what it'd feel like to matter in a house that never fully felt mine. And now, I whispered, it never did. But I do. I reached into my coat, pulled out a manila envelope with the printed article inside, and slipped it into the mailbox. Not for them, for the house. To remind the walls who watched it all happen. The next morning, I sat at the cafe inside the inn, same corner seat I'd used to sort documents. This time, I brought my laptop. No files, no PDFs, just words. I opened a blank document, titled it, The Watch He Wound, The Time They Stole, The Voice I Took Back. I didn't write to publish. I wrote because silence no longer served me. Paragraph by paragraph, I filled in the blanks, scenes they tried to erase, memories they rewrote. I described the green scarf, the empty drawer, the pawn receipt. I ended with one sentence. Some things aren't meant to be fought for. They're meant to be reclaimed. I hit save, closed the laptop, and breathed.